Welcome to Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare, recovery coach professional. Do you love food, alcohol, drugs, sex, social media, cigarettes, or gambling a little too much? The traditional narrative says that addiction to these vices is the problem. The truth is, they are just symptoms. This hit show takes you from recovery to your ultimate life as my special guests and I help you discover how underneath every vice is the addiction to the suffering that developed due to unhealed trauma. So what can you do? Hungry for Answers provides groundbreaking, proven solutions from my best-selling spiritual book, Feast and Famine: Healing Addiction with Grace. It's time to stop suffering and start living your ultimate life. You have a divine right to a life filled with love, joy, peace, and abundance. Hungry for Answers starts now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare. So today's topic is very interesting. It's on the recovery from being perfect. And so I'm just going to read the description for the show today. For many, the drive to be perfect begins in our childhood and follows us for the rest of our lives. These unrealistic expectations from your parents, partner, boss, or even yourself can wreak havoc on your own self-esteem and drive you to unhealthy habits. Join us to discover how to recognize your divine perfection and cut yourself some slack on human perfection. And so today's guest, Paulomi Campbell, connected with me on a podcast matchmaking site. And I was really intrigued with her story about recovery from having to be perfect. And I sort of struggled with that too as a child and as a teen, expectations and all of that good stuff, and still now, and which really drove me to my food addictions and bulimia, like trying to be thin, all that kind of good stuff. And so I thought we would have a good conversation today. And so I'd like to welcome Paulomi to the show. She has her Ph.D. in counseling psychology. So welcome, Paulomi.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm very, very excited to be here.
Yeah, that's great. So I always start my podcast with the same question, and that is, have you ever been hungry for answers in your own life? And when was that, for example, and what did you learn when you sought out the answers?
Yeah, that was a very interesting question for me because I think I didn't even realize that I was hungry for answers until I think just recently that I was, as a child, I was just sort of thrown into the cultural expectations of, what I was supposed to be and who I was supposed to be. And I never really had the chance to know what I needed and what was good for me. And I didn't even realize that I was really searching for the answers. I just sort of followed the crowd. And, my name is Paulomi, and people would always say, follow me. And that's exactly what I did. I just followed, and I just so desperately wanted to be accepted and loved and, feel that connection that people really appreciated me. Yeah. So I just didn't even realize that what I was really searching for is just that sense of peace within myself and knowing who I was. So I think it's just recently is when I realized that what I'm really wanting and what I really wanted was just this sense of like, I'm okay just the way that I am.
Yes. Which is not easy for us to accept that.
No.
And probably because so many people have told us in our lives that that's not okay. And people that we really trust, to guide us in the right direction are, I think what we don't realize is that those people who we're relying on to guide us are actually flawed.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Themselves. Yeah. Exactly. And had the same misguidance given to them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one to realize that your parents or or whomever, your partner, your teachers, they all are dealing with their own trauma. So how could they, or I'm saying they're dealing with their own trauma, that's a big stretch too.
Exactly. They're
Most likely not dealing with it.
no, they're not. They're just sort of on automatic pilot and operating that way, not even aware of, they're aware that they even have trauma from their past. And so, and that's who I was turning to tell me what was right for me is people who are themselves in their own trauma and not even realizing it. So I think that was a big realization. That's been a huge realization for me. And this idea of, just this hunger for this, why is it that I keep chasing what other people expect of me? And why is that still not making me happy? And realizing that it's not what's outside, like as a child, I was just a very carefree, just in the moment, as most children are, and I wasn't necessarily driven. I want to get, I wasn't very much like focused in my life. I was just sort of like a easygoing person. And my mom is a physician. She can take on 20 things at the same time. She doesn't easily get overwhelmed the way that I do if I have too much on my plate. And so that was the expectation of me. So, so I struggled through high school, through college. I barely graduated. I was just trying to going through the motions, and doing a lot of rebelling because there was a lot of expectations from my mom to excel and to do everything. And sort of the idea that you have to go above and beyond because you're a woman and I'm from India. And so like, there's this expectation that you're the model minority. And so there was all these expectations on me that I was trying to meet. And it was just very overwhelming. But eventually I did get my PhD and I thought, okay, now I'm going to feel good enough. I'm going to be worthy. I'm going to feel worthy. And that just didn't do it. And that's when I realized that it's not about my degrees. It's not about if I'm married or not, or if I have kids, or if I have a big house or not a house. It's not about the outside. It's the work within. It's finding that sort of sense of the divinity within you.
Yeah. So we're going to get a lot.
And that's been
We're going to get a lot into that, but let's find out some more things. So so basically, you do have a recovery story. Sometimes I've had a lot of interest in this particular episode, because people didn't realize that you could be in recovery from perfectionism.
Yes.
And so could you talk a little bit about what is perfectionism and why do you think we could be in recovery from it?
Yeah, I think that was a big realization for me too, is that I had my, issues with food and I would use food to cope with my emotions. But my I guess addiction was the need to be perfect so that I was accepted. And I felt good enough. And that's something that I worked for my whole entire life. And it still comes up for me. It's something that I have to really pay attention to. So, I had a mother who could do it all. I mean, she came from India. She, moved to a whole brand new country. She changed residencies because my father got a residency and I'm from Michigan and he got a residency in Michigan and she wasn't able to get matched. So she switched her entire field and went into radiology. She was an anesthesia by training. So, and I was a 2-year-old at the time. So she did all of that, on her own, and just was easily able to achieve everything. So that's the kind of mother I had. And so that was what I thought I needed to be too, to be loved and accepted. I didn't feel, and I don't have any sort of animosity or hatred towards my mother, but it's just a realization that like, oh my God, this was the model that I saw. And I didn't think that anything less than that would be okay. And so but instead of going in that direction, I rebelled because I couldn't do what my mom did. And so in order to be seen and heard, I started rebelling. I started doing really bad in school. I started to lie so that's how that's how it manifested for me. So, so that's kind of the need to be perfect because I couldn't do it, I kind of went in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and there's so much in there, what you just said around, parenting styles too, right? Like, allowing space for your child to tell you what they might enjoy, or that they're overwhelmed.
Yes.
So, and
Yes.
I'm thinking about a story with my son where he didn't want to take any of those college prep type heavy duty classes in high school. And I said, well, you can take the regular classes and, you'll have more, you'll have to do other things, after school, but not too many things. But I just want you to know that if you choose this path, you'll have less choices when you go to apply to college. And we were in Naviance, which is this tool that all parents use with their kids to apply to colleges. And he's like, why do I have so little choices? And I was like, well, I don't mean to say I told you so, because that was
Yes.
not my intention. But I said, this is a really good opportunity to understand that it was okay for you to take a path that was less stressful for you. But and so now I said, listen, there's 6,000 colleges in here. We will find the perfect one for you. And he wound up at the perfect college doing this major that he majored in, that no other colleges in the area had it. And so it led to like this career path that's been wonderful for him.
That's
So
lovely.
I think there's a lot in that story too, around just listening to our children about what speed they can go on.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's managing your own anxiety about that too. Because I think for me, my mom came from India, saw us as, a minority, and she came here to give her children a better life. And so the expectation was that you have to do above and beyond what I did. And so just, it's very important for parents, for everyone, to just sort of check in, is where is this coming from? Like, what is this coming up for me? Like, that I want my child to do this, and it. It's a lot of comparison, like I grew up in a very small community, and like Indian community, and there was a lot of comparison. My child is doing this, my child is doing that, and that's how I grew up. It was always comparison. And I grew up with a particular family, and her and I were 6 months apart, and she was always just a little bit better than me, on everything. And so that's just the culture I grew up in, is that comparing, and it was just this desperate need to just be accepted for who I am, which is that I didn't learn in the typical way that most people did. Like the people that I grew up with, they could get away without studying and still get straight A's. And that's not how I was, so it was always this, like, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not skinny enough. It was just all these, like, I'm not enough statements constantly. So yeah, I think it's very important for parents to be really in tune with their children and to really see and hear them. That's my big message, is to really be able to see and hear and accept your child.
Because I think for a while, even when I was raising my kids, they're adults now, we sort of went to the far extreme of everybody's a winner. Everybody gets a trophy. Nobody, everybody did great. And I was like, that didn't feel right either. Like, as you're sitting there, with teams, sports teams, and, trying to build also self-esteem and a sense of duty and responsibility without making them think that rewards just come.
Yes.
Like, so there was always this balance of parenting. And I think it's just, I don't know, from my friends who are teachers and retiring, I think it's even gotten worse, where now parents are afraid to even say that their kids do anything wrong. And that if something is wrong, it's the teacher's fault. So I don't know how to, I think I do know how to bring the balance back, but we'll get to that too. But it's just interesting how far we've come, right? Because whether you're really strict with your children or you're incredibly loose, your kids wind up in the same place, and that is not knowing who they are.
Right. Yeah. Very true. That's very
So
true.
so we have to find that balance. And
Balance.
that's why I'm glad you do what you do for your
Mhm.
work. So you can help parents and children to find that balance. So
Yeah.
um so the next question I had on the list was, where does the drive to be perfect in our childhood begin? And I think we've really talked about that, but if you can just share some professional insights on where do you think that begins?
I think it begins from, again, just not being able to feel like you're, I mean, we just have an intense desire to be loved and accepted and connected. And so when you feel like as a child, I mean, you're a child and your whole world are your parents. And so their opinion of you or their way of being with you is what matters the most. And so when you feel that, um, I have to, the way that I am is not accepted by my parents, you start to develop layers in order to be accepted by your parents or, the community. But, it starts with your parents. And so that's where I feel that the drive to be perfect, if your parents, sort of the expectation is that you have to do well in school. And it's this sort of, and we start very young, there's a reward, like you'll get a cookie if you do get an A on a test. And we do this with children to incentivize things. But inherently the message is that if you do good, then you're good, then I love you. And that's very tricky. And that we do have to find the balance because of course, we have to support our children to do the best that they can. But I think for me, it was just like, this is what you have to do, period. And there wasn't any like, okay, who are you and how are you going to excel in the best way that you can because you're different from me. So it's sort of that
So
expectation.
there was no separation
Hmm.
between who you are as a person
Hmm.
and what is required of you.
Right.
So there wasn't
Exactly.
a lot of building. The parenting style that I think you're saying is that the parenting was done based on what was required of you,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
right? And
Exactly.
so there wasn't a lot of like, well, who are you?
Hmm.
Let me get to know you.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
who am I talking to here? Before, let's talk about what your homework is. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on with you?
Exactly.
I know that I left corporate America when my daughter was going into high school,
Hmm.
and my son was still in middle school.
Hmm.
And it was really great because I picked them up every day after school, and we would have that time for me to really know them
Hmm.
and talk to them and see what was going on for
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
I have people that say, "Oh, I got to stay home when the kids are babies." I'm like, "Oh, work then."
Yeah. Yeah.
And stay home when they're in middle school and high school because
Yeah.
that's torture for them.
Right.
And so it was just really great to have that connection to them because I really got to know them
Yeah.
or of who they were. And some of it surprised me and some of it was very,
Hmm.
very validating um,
Hmm.
as a parent. And some really challenged me to look at what I was saying
Hmm.
because I hadn't really begun my own healing journey, but
Hmm.
I knew there were times that what I was saying was harmful to them. And
Hmm.
I needed to really, and that's part of why I went for therapy while they were in that time period, because I wanted to make sure, first of all, that I was being the best mom that I could, but two, that I wasn't putting my addictive nature on them.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
anyway,
beautiful.
thank you. So we're going to a break now. You're listening to Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare, and my special guest, Paulomi Campbell, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to Hungry for Answers. To learn more about me or my work, please go to clarity.com. That's CLARE-ITY.com. And I'm here with Dr. Paulomi Campbell. And Paulomi, how can people reach you if they'd like to learn more about your work?
Sure. My website is www.inaratherapy.com. And if you go on my website, you can fill in your email address, and I offer 6 weeks worth of free resources that I sort of wrote, and it's my free offering for people who are interested. And then you can book a 45-minute discovery call with me just to see if working with me is a good fit for both of
Yeah.
us.
And can you repeat the name of the website? There was like a little
Sure.
glitch
Oh,
there.
okay. Sorry. It's Inara Therapy. So
Can you spell that?
yeah,
Mhm.
www.inaratherapy.com. And Inara means from light to darkness, or from darkness
Oh.
to light. I'm sorry, reverse, from darkness to light. Yes.
That's okay. I think I'm actually going to tell the story I was telling on the break. I said I wasn't going to, but my mom is in hospice care. And
Mhm.
throughout my life, she was really a not a positive influence on my eating disorders.
Mhm.
And I had to do a lot of healing. But I was saying to Paulomi that even now, going to visit her where she's declined, I still worry about if she's going to say something about my weight, which
Mhm.
I'm able to snap out of it because I recognize that that's just one part of me.
Mhm.
That is not the daughter that's coming to care for her mother,
Mhm.
and not the daughter that, that is a grown woman. And these parts of us, we're made up of parts.
Mhm.
And those parts are based on our trauma situations. And it's okay for that traumatic time of my life for that part to come up and say, wait, are we okay? Are we safe?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that my question to you is, how do unrealistic expectations from our parents wreak havoc on our self-esteem?
Again, if that if the drive is to be just like your parent, and that was my case, is that I was supposed to be just like my mom, just as driven, able to handle, able to multitask the way she did. And if you and as a child, again, you don't have the resources to know that that people are different, and people's strengths are different, and people have weaknesses too, and that's okay. You don't have that knowledge as a child. And so, you know feeling like you can't meet those expectations, that's where as a child, that's where your self-esteem comes from, is that your parents love you for who you are. And when you feel like you don't feel the love because you're not like your parent, it shows up in so many different ways. And
So let me ask you this. So we know this, right? As a child, we can't handle that, right? We don't, and it
Mhm.
wreaks havoc on our self-esteem. Don't you think, like, based on the story that I told, that no matter how old we get, or no matter, I'm basically parenting my mom now, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That no matter how old we get, and let's say my mom is an extreme case because she's in hospice care,
Mhm.
but let's say you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s. It's Does the pattern always keep repeating itself? Like, your parents are still going to parent you the same way, even though you're an adult, and you're going to still react the same way until you choose not to? Like, I can't believe that the expectation would be that our parents would change. It would have to come from us.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think that. I think that, through your own work, your inner work, I think that you can influence other people, in the sense that your parents or your partner or whoever it is can see that you are working on your own triggers. You're trying to heal the parts of you. So I think that definitely can influence them. But yeah, ultimately, if they're not willing to do their own work, and sort of heal from their own traumas, then yes, the pattern will keep continuing, and it'll keep continuing in if you're not doing your own work, it'll keep continuing in the relationships that you experience, whether it's a job, a partner, with your children. It'll just keep repeating. And so that's why this inner work is so important, is to,
Mhm. And
yeah.
I know with my mom, because we're talking about her own addiction, her own body image issues, right? That
Mhm.
it's just whatever she was doing, that I said to her at one point, you're not allowed to talk about my weight with me, whether it's positive or negative. You're just not allowed. And so
Mm-hmm.
it became a topic that, and she tried her best. Sometimes it worked, and other times she'd be like, ah, I shouldn't have said that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm disrespecting what you asked of me. And I would forgive her.
Yeah.
And then we got to a point where she could actually give me, I was allowing her to give me positive compliments. But for a while, even getting the positive compliment, even her saying any word that had to do with my body was a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was like, wow, how much weight have you lost? You know, you look awesome. I'd be like, oh, where's the food?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
But eventually through healing
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that I don't need to be perfect in her eyes, even in anyone's eyes,
Mm-hmm.
that she can't judge me unless I give her that title.
Yeah.
Doing all of that work allowed me to now be able to have her say to me, you look wonderful, Robin. Like, who doesn't want to hear that from their parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for years I couldn't even hear that. So what I'm saying to our audience listeners, you have to, and correct me if I'm wrong, or add on to this.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide that you want to heal this, whatever came from your parents, you have to set boundaries, and only you can adjust them. So let's talk about boundaries for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
How did you establish boundaries with your parents?
I think that's still something that I struggle with, is setting boundaries, and because there's still this inherent sense of wanting to please. And so I still have to be very conscious of setting boundaries and saying, what is okay for me and what's not. And so that's something that I still have to work on, including in my own, relationship now. It's that it's very easy for me to go into the pleasing mode because I so badly want to be accepted or loved. And so, and it was just, as I developed more confidence in myself, boundaries naturally started to develop for me, that it wasn't okay for someone to, speak to me in a certain way, or, the way that I am is that I'm more interested in the emotional world and in people's emotions, and sort of not the soft sciences. And I have a lot of people in my life that are in the medical field. Yeah. And need scientific evidence, and that's the only way that they're going to believe things. And so I have to be really, really work on, that's your belief, but this is what I believe in, and it's okay for me to believe in what I believe in. And if you don't go along with that, then that's okay. So I've had to I get very terrified with people who are very I know all the scientific literature and I want everything that's empirically based to see that. I get very nervous. And so I have to just it's like my voice, I notice myself just staying quiet. Yeah. And so it takes a lot of work for me to say, this is what I believe in. And just because it's not proven by science, doesn't necessarily mean it's not real.
Oh yeah, that is for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something that you said about wanting to please. So I can just imagine that there are listeners out there that are like, what's wrong with wanting to please?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I think we all want to please. I think we all, I guess if you're a giver, you want to please. If you're a receiver, you want to be pleased. But let's talk to all the givers out there for a moment. So there's a difference between wanting to please from a place of to want it to being liked. And if you're doing that, well, you have to accept that, right? You have to acknowledge that that's why you're doing it. But there's also wanting to please because you want to be of service. And so I think in all of our healing, that, if we're on the healing journey, there's something that shifts between wanting to please, to be liked, to recognizing that we want to please in order to serve.
Right.
And so tell me your thoughts on that. And if you think that if you see yourself going between those two perspectives when you get into the please mode, like, can you move out of the not needing to be liked as to I'm doing this because I want to and I want to help.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's something that I have to consciously be aware in myself is that because I do like when, to make people happy and to make people feel safe and to people, and, like, I mean, in this profession too, I'm in this profession because I want to help people to discover who they really are. And that's something that makes me feel like I'm being of service. And
Mhm.
so, but I can quickly fall into, I'm going to let go of all of my needs because I want this person to see me as, somebody that's so kind and so sweet and so giving and caring, that I'm willing to let go of what I need, or willing to like kind of silence my own voice. And I can switch into that mode because that's what I did, for my whole life.
Yes, and a part of that too, Paulomi, is um, keeping the peace,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like, I have
Yeah.
a girlfriend that thinks that, I do things in my own relationship where she'd be like, I'd never let that happen. I'm like, well, I do, because this is this is what works for us.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
so, um, it's just interesting that sometimes I just think this need to please and this need to be perfect, I just think you have to be conscious of why you're doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to be very aware. You can't live on autopilot. You have to check in with your emotions. You have to check in with yourself daily because it's very easy to switch into that autopilot mode where you're just repeating the same patterns and
Mhm.
then wondering why you don't feel fulfilled and connected in your life. And so it's a constant daily check in with yourself and not running on. And that's why for me, like, having too much on my plate, I just can't do that because then I fall right back into old patterns. So I have to
Yeah.
be very conscious of like taking things slow in my life, and that's not really appreciated by society. It's all about being fast and doing 20 things at the same time and running on 20 cups of coffee, and I just can't function that way. And I'm finally starting to say that's okay. This is who I am, and I can be my best when I appreciate who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So next question was, do we repeat the same patterns throughout our lives?
Mhm.
So I'm thinking about that question because I wrote it.
Yeah.
What did I mean by that question? Um, and we're talking about the need to please and the need to be perfect. Um, and can we see that playing out in everything that we do? Like, can that be like an overarching um, drive to everything?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it has been, um, but where I noticed it more is in my relationships. My intimate relationships, and even with friendships. Just such a desire to be liked, and but then it would turn into resentment for not getting the same thing back. I would be the really nice, sweet, do everything for you person. But inside, I was like, why am I not getting that in return? And so I'd become very resentful. And then once the honeymoon phase of a relationship ended, like all the dopamine was gone, that part of the phase of the relationship was gone. That's when I would just say, hey, look, I'm here too. And so there was a part of me that didn't, it wasn't authentic. I wasn't authentically giving. I was trying to get their attention. I was trying to make them love me. And so, yes, that played out my whole life. And it's not until my current relationship where I realized that too is the pattern. So I had to really look in the mirror and see that this pattern has really, because I hadn't done the inner healing, I hadn't done the inner work. And
Mhm.
so my big thing is that you've got to do the work. It's hard. It hurts. It's not easy to look at yourself and to own some of your stuff, but that's the only way to come out of it.
Yeah. And because this is a podcast on addiction and recovery,
Yeah. Yeah.
we really just have to address, always the elephant in the room, and that, you know, driving to be perfect is really impossible
Mhm.
in the human form. And it creates, and especially if you haven't done your healing work and you have unhealed trauma that you're still suffering over, and then you're still struggling, you have suffering going on, and then you have this drive to be perfect, and it's almost like they're have like boxing mat gloves on, and
Yeah,
they're punching at each other, right? Those two. And unhealed trauma leads to suffering,
Mhm.
and suffering leads to addiction,
Mhm.
because we are truly only addicted to suffering,
Mhm.
the unhealed trauma, and then we find our habits and our vices, and whatever that is, bad relationships, a bad job,
Mhm.
drugs,
Mhm.
whatever. You heard the bio at the
Mhm.
beginning of this.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, how do you learn to manage the perfectionism so that you can not have that stand in the way of you doing the healing that's required for your life? And so we're going to take a break now. And we'll be back to talk about that. Hello and welcome back to Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare. Please go to clarity.com, CLARE.com. Oh, that's not right. CLARE-ITY.com to learn more about me. And Paulomi, just one more time, can you share your website?
Sure. Yeah, it's www.inaratherapy.com. So inaratherapy.com.
Wonderful. So we have so much to talk about still, but there's a few things I just want to say the first two parts of our conversation. One of the things that working with my therapist, that I really have come to understand is that we are made up of a lot of parts.
Mhm.
And each of these parts is influenced by the trauma that we had.
Mhm.
And many times a part will come up, that drives us. And so there could be this drive to be perfect. But I think
Mhm.
what we have to learn is that that's just one part of us.
Mhm.
And if you allow yourself to acknowledge that part and say, why are you here? What do you need?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
usually some unhealed part of our childhood or teen years that's saying, is it safe? Is it safe
Mhm.
for us?
Mhm.
And if you can somehow talk to this part as the mature adult person that you are and say, hey, listen, I don't have to do 100 things at once. I'm good.
Yes.
You know, that would be very important. Another
Yes.
item is, I kept thinking of this phrase from Oprah. So one of the first things, I love Oprah, and she said, do what you love and the money will follow.
Mhm.
And to me, that also addresses the need for us to do what our parents think
Mhm.
is the best thing for our life, or for us to not take risk when it comes to
Mhm.
doing something that we truly love. Because one of my favorite expressions that was told to me was, success is measured by impact, and
Mhm.
impact is rewarded with abundance. And
Mhm.
so if you do what you love, you will most likely make an impact,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because people will see you're loving this, and you're good at it, and you're helping them, you're being of
Mhm.
service.
Mhm.
And then and then because money is the currency on our planet, you will receive money for it, as long as
Exactly.
you value yourself,
Right.
right? You have to
Right.
place the right value on your work.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying all these things because I think people, when they're affected by this topic about, the perfection that our parents put on us, um, they don't do what they love.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you have to find your way to what you love so that you can make the most impact in the world, so that you can truly serve.
Exactly.
And then again, the money will follow. Oprah
Mhm.
is so true. Is so true.
Yeah.
because whatever you're really good at, there's always a market for it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go into the last part now.
Okay. Okay.
I also had parents. My mom wanted me to be perfect in how I looked, how I dressed,
Mm-hmm.
and that people judged me by that and judged her.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was a professional man in our community, and he used to say to my brothers and I, "You are the sons and daughter of a professional man, and you need to behave in a certain way. You always have to be on guard for how you're perceived in the community." And I really didn't realize what an impact I had on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what that had on me, excuse me. And until I realized that that was their version of perfection, not my own.
Yes,
And when I went on the spiritual path, I got even more confused a little bit, because all of a sudden the divine God, whatever you want to, so when we say the divine, at least for me, I'm talking about the non-physical realm.
right.
So whatever the divine means to you, whatever God, goddess, whatever your is, that to me, angels, spirit guides,
Mm-hmm.
that's the divine in its totality. And that the divine said that we're all perfect. And I'm like, wait,
Mm-hmm.
I just spent all these years trying to get unperfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
According to what
Yeah.
other people thought I was perfect at. So
Mm-hmm.
here's just a funny story. My dad, a medium was at my house, and my dad's been deceased for like 25 years. And she says, "Oh, your father, George, would like to speak with you." And I'm like, "Oh, great." And she said, "He wants to tell you that he still thinks, that you're perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, he still wants you to be perfect." And at first I was like, "What? No, I'm working really hard on this." And then I realized what he meant was the divine perfection. That's what
Yeah.
he was looking for me to be. So when we're talking about divine perfection, can you share with our audience what you think that means?
I think it's that divine perfection is also what you kind of mentioned. It's not this physical realm. It's something that we don't necessarily see, but it's that when we sort of refine this internal vision is when we get connected to that divinity, which is not conditioned by time, not conditioned by what we do. How it's the constant that's within us. That's at least how I define it for myself. Is that it's this constant that's not affected by what we do and say and what happens in our life. It is what it is, and that's it. And it's perfect just the way it is, and so it's not there's not a judgment around it. So that's how I see as the perfect. But that also was confusing for me too, because I was trying to just accept me for who I am, even my imperfections.
Mm-hmm.
So when it was defined as this is that you are perfect, that's who you really are, it was hard for me to understand that too. But the way that I sort of help myself is that the divinity is not conditioned by time. It's just it is, and it's continuous, and it lasts. It doesn't die off like our body does.
Right.
It's this constant entity that's there no matter what we do, and this life that we live, that carries on.
Yeah. So if we're thinking about the inner divinity, I wrote an entire book on that called Messiah Within.
Mm-hmm.
When we're thinking about, and then the divine keys, when we're thinking about that inner divinity, when you're saying it's all perfect, that it's the divine perfection, which is that everything is perfect. Might not be, I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Like it might not be fun, but it's still perfect, right? Because it's part of our journey. It's part of our life's journey. It's part of perhaps what our soul would like to learn in this lifetime. And so every opportunity is an opportunity for you to say, what am I learning from here? Why is this in my face right now?
Right.
And
Yeah.
what do I need to learn and understand in order for it not to have the same level of influence that it has today? In
Right.
other words, there are so many things. If you're following the divine path, the inner path, what you might notice is that something keeps coming back,
Mm-hmm.
but it comes back in a different shape or form. And know this, that if this is part of your life's journey, your soul's journey, it will not go away
Exactly. Yeah.
until you learn what you need to learn from it. So to
Right.
stay open to the inquiry is really the key. And this is what we're talking about divine perfection, is immediately takes the stigma away that something could be right or wrong. There is no right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
just perfect,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
It's to help your soul evolve to the
Yes.
next level.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so when you start looking at the world like that, even though I'm telling you, it could be good, bad, or ugly, and you're like, that can't be perfect. It is
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
perfect for where you are on the journey, this exact moment. And it's what is it that I can learn from this
Yeah.
so that the rest of my journey, I'm more informed,
Right. Yeah.
right?
I would have just like to add that that's why I think doing the emotional healing is so
Mhm.
important,
Oh,
because
yes.
you can't get to that spiritual understanding of why things happened unless you do the healing, unless you heal from your past, because then you can see every opportunity as trying to help your soul to evolve to the next level, and so,
Yes.
but I feel like there's at times people just kind of, spiritually bypass, in the sense that they don't do this emotional healing work, and they turn to, like, for example, like my background is in Hinduism, and so I I was I was introduced to Hindu camp. Like, we went to camps as a child, and it was the premise of Hinduism is that, like, all this around us, like this world, is all a concept called Maya, which is that nothing is real. And
Mhm.
so it almost was like everything that you're experiencing, it almost has this, like, dismissive aspect to it, that like, all this emotional suffering and pain, it's all not real. And so it's like you have to bypass that and just know that God is the only thing that's real. And
Yeah.
that's very much like, it felt like because I am an emotional person, I had very big feelings as a child, and it felt like I had to just, like, dismiss that completely about myself and know that none of it's real. So I just want to sort of, that's why I think that this work is so important, that you can only go to those levels if you first heal from your past.
Yes, yes,
Do the
because
inner
I followed the spiritual journey, India, the whole
work.
thing,
Mhm.
Kabbalah, I probably had so many readings and so many healings, and I'm an advanced energy practitioner
Yeah.
myself, and Akashic record reading, but it really wasn't until I did the emotional healing with
Yeah.
a trained therapist
Hmm.
that I could really release the trauma that created the suffering,
Hmm.
which was my addiction, and then how I relieved myself through food.
Hmm.
Like, I had to get to that emotion, and yes,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, probably the hardest thing I ever did, but also the most rewarding,
Hmm. Hmm.
because now I have so much peace,
Hmm.
walking through the world. And yet, as I said earlier, something will happen, right? Something will happen, and
Hmm.
I'll get triggered.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
what would you
that's,
like our listeners to walk away from with today? Is there anything else that you would like to add?
yeah. So, through everything that I've been through, I think that I think I've come to this sort of why I'm here on this earth, my purpose. And
Mhm.
I really feel like, because of what I feel like I didn't receive as a child and throughout, some of my life, was this really, the sense of really being seen and heard and accepted for who I am. And that's what I feel is at the core of all of our needs. That's the only way that we can sort of go on a spiritual path, to, is if we're first seen and heard. And for me, that's I can see it in my clients that I work with, that as soon as they feel that when they're in the room with me, I can feel their whole like nervous system sort of calming down. And that's when the work can begin. So that's what my message is. And I feel like my purpose is to provide that space for people to really be able to feel seen and heard.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so you've been listening to Hungry for Answers with Paulomi Campbell, and she is a PhD in counseling psychology. And we've been talking about recovery from perfectionism and coming into being seen and heard first and foremost by yourself, and then gathering the tools so that you can influence others too. And this has been a really interesting conversation. And I want all of our listeners to know that you're never alone. You can reach out for help in your own community or through professionals, but you can also, as we've talked about today, reach inside for your own inner divinity and go inside, because the answers that we all need for our lives are always inside of us. And so thank you everybody for being here and listening to Hungry for Answers. And until next time, have a wonderful life. Thank you for tuning into Hungry for Answers. Learning to love ourselves is the one true solution to addiction. Make a commitment to healing today and see how you can reach your ultimate potential. Remember, you have a divine right to a life filled with love, joy, peace, and abundance. To learn more about me and my offerings, please go to clarity.com. That's Clare, CLARE-ITY.com. See you next time.